The wind is slow tonight. Not the dramatic kind that rattles shutters and makes old dogs howl, but a soft, patient breeze, like someone exhaling through a reed flute. It slips across your cheek as you stand in the dimming twilight of a place that doesn't have a name yet. The air smells like with smoke, crushed sage, and that distant, clean sharpness you only get before rain. You hear it too, far off, a storm waiting politely in the wings. You are barefoot, naturally. Everyone is. The ground is not pavement or tile, but packed earth, cool and worn smooth by generations of quiet feet. Around you, the village, if you can call it that, is settling in. Mud brick homes curve low to the ground like resting animals. A few fires crackle. Someone is laughing, but not too loudly. It's a laughter meant for shared meals and simple jokes about goats. You will not need to understand the language. It is mostly gestures and glances tonight anyway. The year? Let's call it 8,500 BC. Give or take a few centuries. Calendars are not especially in fashion, and if someone did try to invent one, it would probably revolve around goats or grain storage or something deeply practical and deeply forgettable. This is the Epipaleolithic, an in-between time. Not quite hunter-gatherers, not quite farmers. Your people are experimenting with staying put, which is bold, really, when you think about it. For hundreds of thousands of years, the default setting was keep walking, and now they decided to stop. Sort of, for a while. A cheeky warning. You probably won't make it through this day. Not because it's dangerous, although there are wolves on the hills, but because it's long, quiet, and sleep seems to like hiding in the folds of days like this. So if you find yourself drifting off, it's fine. Someone here will keep the fire going. Before we begin, let's gently remind you to like and subscribe if this kind of slow history feels like your kind of thing. It helps us grow the village. And let us know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is in your part of the world. We're building a timeline together, one sleepy mind at a time. Now let's ease into tonight's journey. You wake just before dawn, which is a useful habit in this time. The sun is not merely decorative. It's your entire scheduling department. There is no snooze button, unless you count curling deeper under a high blanket, which you briefly consider. But someone outside is clinking stones together. Not angrily. It's the kind of clinking that means, I'm making fire. If you don't come soon, there will be no roasted nuts left. You rise. Stretch. The air is cold enough to make you exhale visible regrets. A woman nearby is grinding seeds on a flat rock. She doesn't look up, but you feel her noticing you. This is how language begins. Not with words, but with rhythm, with noticing. And that's tonight's big historical fact. Before written or spoken storytelling as we know it, there were gestures, repetitions, visual rhythms. Stories weren't told at first. They were shown. A hand on the heart, a carved mark on a cave wall, a certain kind of dance done after a certain kind of storm. These were your libraries. Later, someone will press red ochre into their palm and slap it against stone. It will dry and it will mean, I was here, or this place matters, or don't eat those berries. Scholars still debate whether prehistoric handprints were meant as signatures, warnings, or just an early version of you up, graffiti, you leave your shelter. Today is not about hunting. It's not even about gathering. It's a rare thing, a storytelling day. This morning, an elder will retell the story of the sun's long sleep, the myth that explains why winter came late last year. You've heard it before, many times. But today is special because today it will be danced. Not danced like ballet. Think slower, earthier. One person crouches, becomes a sleeping sun. Another traces circles in the dirt around them. Someone imitates the moon, slightly tipsy. The whole performance is maybe 15 minutes, but it says more than an hour-long speech. You do not clap at the end. You do not need to. The silence after is part of the story. Here's your obscure cultural tidbit. There's a young man in the village who always adds an extra hop at the end of the sun dance. No one knows why. He insists it's traditional. Everyone else suspects he just likes the attention. Every generation has that guy. You sit in the shade of a low acacia tree. Bees buzz in lazy ellipses. Someone's baby cries once, then hiccups into sleep. There's a bird nesting in the roof that isn't supposed to be there, but no one minds. You close your eyes and listen. And what you hear more than anything else is how stillness holds meaning here. Later, you'll help someone gather smooth stones to line the edge of the central hearth. The placement of these stones matters. They create a kind of visual grammar. Left to right, pale to dark, large to small. No one says why, they just do it. And centuries from now, someone will dig them up and marvel at their arrangement, wondering if it was art or ritual or just an early form of guys being guys. The afternoon passes like honey poured onto warm bread. By evening, a group of children will gather to play a game that involves silently copying each other's movements, an imitation game. One crouches, the rest follow. One taps their head, the others do the same. It's silly and wonderful. You're invited to join. You do. And this too, oddly enough, is storytelling. The passing of gestures, of patterns, of shared understanding without a single spoken word. And it will live in their bones long after the sun dips behind the hills. Someone passes you a bowl. It's lukewarm stew, possibly involving tubers, possibly involving regrets. But it's nourishing, and you're too tired to be picky. As the fire crackles and smoke drifts up to the slow stars, the elder tells another tale. This one isn't danced, it's drawn. A stick in hand. She traces spirals and animals in the dust. The lines don't last. That's the point. Stories, like dreams, don't always want to be remembered. The wind picks up again, same as this morning. Still soft, still patient. And you, full of sun dances and dusty spirals, feel yourself sinking into the evening like a stone into still water. You wake, but just barely. It's that pleasant kind of half-consciousness where your body knows it's morning, but your mind politely refuses to confirm. Somewhere nearby, someone is snoring with confidence. A rooster makes a sound that is only technically musical. You roll over and squint at the sky. It's lightning but not committed yet. The stars are still gossiping, reluctant to leave. You are, today, a guest in another settlement. You walked a few days' journey with a small band, traders, sort of, except what they trade isn't salt or beads. It's stories. Welcome to the Neolithic storytelling circuit. Not that anyone calls it that. But for thousands of years, people have walked from one group to the next, not just to exchange goods, but to remind each other how to be human. Not with facts, with meaning. Today's major historical fact? Long before the invention of writing systems, there existed a kind of intertribal oral culture, passed via repeated stories told in gestures, art, and shared ritual. These weren't just fairy tales. They were memory storage. Laws, maps, seasonal cues, all dressed up as myths. So yes, your village had visiting performers long before you had Netflix. And they're here now. You rise from your sleeping mat, bones creaking a little. Someone offers you a drink made from fermented honey and berries. You accept, even though it's a bit early in the day for hallucinations. You hear laughter. A woman is trying to teach someone else a story dance from her home valley, and neither of them seem to be doing it correctly, which is half the point. Soon, the main event begins. They've built a stage of sorts. Not a platform, just a flat circle of trampled dirt surrounded by stones. There are no curtains. There is no backstage, just a sense of occasion. People gather, settling with the kind of hush that only comes when everyone agrees this is important, even if no one says it aloud. The first performance is odd. A man wearing a headdress made of woven grass and feathers pretends to be a mountain. Yes, a mountain. He moves slowly, blinking rarely, while others move around him mimicking rivers and storms. It's long. It's strange. It's strangely moving. A child beside you whispers, "He's done this before." And then, as an afterthought, "He's not very good, but he's very serious." Storytelling here isn't about perfection. It's about passing the torch without burning the house down. As the day unfolds, you witness more stories. Some involve props. A painted stone, a string of bones, a carved stick that looks suspiciously like a toothpick with ambition. One tale features two performers pretending to be foxes in love. It ends, inexplicably, with a pine cone funeral. You don't get it. Neither does anyone else. But it gets a warm round of approving hums. Here's your obscure tidbit. One tribe in this region uses blinking patterns during storytelling as a signal of emphasis, like boldface for the eyelids. It's almost impossible to mimic unless you grew up doing it, and mildly hilarious to watch outsiders try. You're invited to share something from your group. You panic slightly, but then you remember the spiral and dust story. You kneel, draw, circle by circle. Someone hums. Someone else begins to trace the same spiral in the air. You didn't mean to start something, but now you've started something. Scholars still debate whether these pan-tribal storytelling gatherings were seasonal, sacred, or just an excuse to show off your latest antler-based hat. The sun begins to lean west. A group of elders sits together, not speaking, just watching. It's a kind of witnessing. You feel honored, or maybe just sleepy. Hard to tell. Tonight, there will be singing. The kind of low, layered chants that feel older than memory. You will not know the words, but you'll feel them in your ribs. The fire will crackle. The honey drink will be passed again. Someone will dance badly and be applauded for effort. And someone, maybe you, will sit just outside the circle, watching the flames lick the sky, and wonder if anyone in the far future will ever tell stories about this moment. They probably will. They might even fall asleep halfway through. The sky is a little bluer this morning, sharp, clear, indifferent. You're waking up in the in-between hours again, where the last embers of the night fire glow like sleepy stars, and the first bird dares to break the silence with a single, confused chirp. You stretch beneath a hide blanket that smells like the inside of a very well-traveled animal and shuffle to your feet. Your knees crack. They didn't ask permission. A few other travelers are doing the same morning ballet, stiff-legged, squinting, yawning like confused lions. There's absolutely no rush. Time here wears soft shoes. Your hosts from yesterday's storytelling gathering have already begun preparing a departure meal. It is, like all such meals, a thoughtful combination of dried fruit, tuber paste, and whatever's left from yesterday but still looks optimistic. You chew in silence. Everyone chews in silence. This is a ritual of leaving, a moment when stories aren't told but are digested. You're heading back to your home valley today. You're bringing more than blisters and new calluses. You're carrying stories, and not just the tales themselves, but how they were told. A way someone leaned forward, a new dance move, a clever use of a rock. You're already planning how to borrow it all shamelessly and pass it off as ancestral tradition. Here's the major historical fact for this stretch of the journey. Many ancient storytelling traditions were embodied, literally performed through movement, posture, and facial expression. This was not optional flair. It was the main event. The body was the book. As you walked the dusty path home, following goat trails and soft riverside bends, you rehearsed the mountain dance in your head. The serious mountain guy from yesterday keeps showing up in your mind. You try his blinkless expression and accidentally trip on a root. You do not fall gracefully. A nearby raven notices and cackles rudely. Eventually, you come upon something unexpected. A wall. It's not tall, maybe knee height, built from stones, some with smooth surfaces, some etched with rough marks. You kneel, brush away moss. One stone has a pattern of dots. Another shows what might be a hand with extra fingers, or a lizard, or just bad aim. You pause. This is not your settlement. This is something else. The stones don't speak in words, but you can almost hear a hum beneath them, a resonance. Someone, many someones, came here often enough to stack rocks and carve marks. They cared. They wanted to remember something. Or someone. Here's your obscure tidbit. In certain Neolithic cultures, finger flutings, those wavy line patterns carved into soft cave walls, were sometimes created by children. Some archaeologists believe it was a form of playful mimicry. Look, I'm storytelling like the grown-ups. A kind of prehistoric crayon doodle. You sit by the wall for a long moment. The air is still. A single bee investigates your foot, then loses interest. You trace the stones again with your eyes. Your hand. You don't know what the symbols mean, but you don't need to. You feel it, and that might be the point. Scholars still debate whether these carved symbols were a form of proto-writing or just visual rituals with no fixed reading. Maybe they meant something only in the moment. Maybe they were performed, not decoded. You eventually rise and continue your journey, stepping back into the trees. The wall disappears behind you, like a dream you swear you'll remember, but won't. As you approach the outer edges of your home valley, you recognize the curve of the riverbank, the slight tilt of that one oddly shaped tree that looks like it's always halfway through a shrug. Home, more or less. You're greeted without words. Just nods, smiles. A child throws a stick vaguely in your direction. You pretend to be surprised. You catch it, eventually, badly. Tonight, you'll sit around the fire and retell what you saw. You'll dance the mountain story with flair. You'll forget parts, add others. No one will notice. No one will mind. And when the fire dies low and someone hums that old, slow melody your grandmother used to hum when the barley was ready for harvest, you'll find yourself joining in. The rhythm is familiar, the gestures, too. But the meaning? That shifts, doesn't it? You close your eyes. The melody continues. No one asks what time it is. Morning again, but it sneaks up gently this time, like a polite guest. You wake to a soft drizzle, and the sound of someone outside tapping stones together in a rhythm you almost recognize. It's not music. Not quite. It's a message, an invitation. You follow the sound barefoot again. Your feet remember the path better than your eyes do. The drizzle is light enough to be refreshing, heavy enough to make your hair look like it regrets its life choices. A group has gathered near the southern hill, the one with the strange flat rock. It's not marked, but everyone treats it like it's meant for something. Today, apparently, it's meant for shadows. You stand beside a woman balancing a bowl of ash in one hand and a carved stick in the other. She's not in a hurry. No one here is. Then she begins. She dips the stick in the ash and draws a long, winding line on the rock. Others follow, drawing suns, antlers, circles, and some that might be a very optimistic fish. They're not trying to be accurate. They're trying to evoke. This is a shadow drawing ceremony, a kind of pictorial storytelling where symbols are drawn in temporary pigments, meant to fade. Sometimes they're washed away by the rain before the story ends. That's okay. The point is not preservation. It's presence. Today's major historical fact. Before writing became permanent, many cultures embrace ephemeral visual storytelling. Chalk drawings, sand paintings, even soot-based art on leaves or bark. These were designed to disappear. Storytelling was not for storage. It was for the moment. You squat beside the woman and add your own mark. A spiral, of course. It's a little lopsided. Someone laughs gently. You feel no shame. The spiral still works. Here's your obscure tidbit. Some early cave artists used moss-chewed bark to smear colors onto walls. It gave a hazy, dreamlike effect. Historians have absolutely no idea if this was intentional or just someone improvising with swamp supplies. Either way, the result is oddly beautiful. A child next to you begins telling a story in gestures, hands flapping like wings, a finger pointing to the sky, an exaggerated yawn. You try to follow. A few others join in. It seems to be about a bird who stole the moon and had to give it back because it kept dropping it. You nod seriously. This tracks. By midday, the rock is covered in symbols, many already beginning to fade in the rain. The ash runs in thin rivers. No one tries to stop it. Someone sighs contentedly. You sit with the group, legs crossed, watching the marks vanish. It's peaceful, like listening to someone hum a song and then forget the ending. You don't need the ending. The middle was enough. Scholars still debate whether these ceremonies were art, religion, or just a very elaborate excuse to not do chores for a few hours. As the drizzle fades and clouds drift, the group disperses. No one says goodbye. They just stop being here, one by one. You walk the edge of the valley again, past the same shrugging tree, past the place where the river makes a sound like a sleeping animal. And then you see it, one of the travelers from the other valley, the one who performed the Foxglove Pinecone tragedy. They're sketching something into the mud with a stick. You sit beside them. They look at you, gesture at the muddy design, and shrug. You nod. Then you add a dot. The two of you sit in silence, making a masterpiece the rain will erase by dinner. And somehow that's the whole point. The sun is late today. Not by much, just enough that the birds seem mildly insulted. You sit by the fire, poking yesterday's embers with a stick that used to be a spoon. It still has that proud, spoon-like attitude, even if it is long since retired from soup duty. A few people are stirring. One woman is muttering into a bundle of herbs. A child is pretending to be a mammoth, which mostly involves snorting and stomping around with a fur pelt over their head. You sip something warm and bitter, and definitely not tea. Your tongue regrets it, but your bones approve. The group is heading out today. Not far, just to the ridge, where the stones hum when the wind hits them right. It's not superstition. It's acoustics. Probably. Maybe. You walk the trail with the others, dust curling up around your feet like lazy ghosts. The path winds upward, and the view widens with every step. The valley opens behind you, like a page slowly turning. At the top, the stones are waiting. They aren't arranged. Not exactly. They're just there, tall and silent, and a little judgmental in the morning light. You walk among them, tracing their lichen-streaked sides with your fingers. They're warm from the sun, though the sun only just arrived. Today's event isn't a performance. It's an echo. Here's your historical fact. Many early human cultures discovered the acoustic properties of stone. Certain locations amplified sound naturally. These spaces became gathering sites for chant, ritual, and the kind of storytelling that required more than a whisper. The landscape itself helped carry the tale. A man steps forward. He places both hands on a stone, leans his forehead against it, and hums. Just one note. Deep, steady. The stone answers, faintly, like an old friend remembering the words to a shared song. Then another joins. Then another. Soon, the entire group is part of this strange, resonant murmur. No words, just vibration. You feel it in your teeth. The story being told today is not in language. It's in presence. The arrangement of people, the rhythm of breath, the silence between sounds. Some cultures might have called it prayer. Others might call it rehearsal. Around here, they don't call it anything at all. They just do it. And here's your obscure tidbit. In some mountainous regions, it's believed that certain stones could hold voices, and that shouting a story into one might leave an echo behind for future listeners. Whether this was metaphorical, hopeful, or just very committed acoustics, no one's entirely sure. You lean against a stone and try it. One low hum, then silence. You think you hear it return. Or maybe that's just your own breath looping back. Either way, it's oddly comforting. The ceremony lasts until the sun reaches its highest point, and the stones begin casting long shadows that look like exclamation marks. Then, quietly, people begin to leave. No one talks about it. That would be like describing a sunset with math. You walk back slowly. The trail feels shorter going down. At camp, the child who was a mammoth is now pretending to be a pile of snow. Honestly, their range is impressive. You sit near the fire, watching smoke curl upward. Someone beside you sketches patterns in the dirt with a bone. You recognize them from the stones, one of the first to hum. They tap the bone against the earth, then draw 3 short lines in a spiral. You nod. It makes no sense. It doesn't need to, and the fire crackles. A beetle meanders by. Somewhere, someone is singing a lullaby in a language that might have once been a warning or a recipe. No one can quite remember, but you hum along anyway. The sky is restless tonight. Not stormy, just fidgety. Clouds drift in odd angles, like they've forgotten which way the wind is supposed to go. The stars peek out, cautious and shy. You lie on your back, watching them shuffle across the darkness like a slow, glowing herd. Sleep doesn't come right away. That's fine. Tonight is not for sleeping. Tonight is for listening. A quiet ripple moves through camp as the storyteller arrives. She's not old, but she carries herself like she's been watching the stars longer than any of them. Her hair is braided with beads that click softly as she walks. You suspect it's intentional. She sits on the central stone, the unofficial seat of stories. No one says anything. They just arrange themselves around her like cats finding sun patches. And then, without preamble, she begins. No words, just hands, slow gestures. a palm rising like smoke, fingers flicking like flames, a fist pressing into the earth. The children lean in. Even the teenagers pretend not to care very intently. She's telling the story of how night learned to speak. It involves a silent bird, a stubborn mountain, and a trickster who swallowed a star by mistake and had to cough it up using only gestures. The story is absurd, poetic, and clearly different every time. No one minds. This is not about canon. This is about communion. Today's major historical fact. In many indigenous cultures, particularly those without written language, complex cosmologies and mythologies were passed down visually through dance, hand sign, and performance. The audience didn't just hear the story. They watched it unfold. You find yourself moving your fingers in sync with the storyteller. Everyone does. It's not mimicry. It's echo. Here's your obscure tidbit. Some early human groups developed gesture languages not just for communication, but for ceremonial use. Specific signs used only during certain seasons or during rites of passage, like vocabulary that only blooms in spring. The storyteller pauses, holds up both hands, and shapes the night. Literally, she cups the air, smooths it with her palm, then hangs a star in the sky with her fingertips. A child gasps. You kind of want to, too. There's a moment at the end of the performance where no one moves. The silence holds. Not out of reverence, though that's part of it, but because no one wants to break whatever just happened. Finally, someone coughs. Loudly. And it's over. The group begins to disperse, but slower than usual. People glance at each other with a quiet, shared grin. It's like being in on a joke that also happens to be the meaning of life. You linger by the fire. The embers blink at you. You blink back. Across the camp, the storyteller is gently rearranging her beads. You catch her eye. She nods just once. You nod back. That was not a show. That was a gift. You lie back again, the stars now fully awake above you. You trace their patterns with your finger. You think of the mountain, the trickster, the swallowed star. You think of stories told in silence. And finally, with sigh the size of a small constellation, you drift off. You wake to the smell of smoke and something vaguely resembling breakfast. It's unclear what exactly is cooking, but it's being cooked with conviction, and that counts for something. A few flat stones have been warmed near the fire, and a thick paste is being spread onto them with a certain prehistoric elegance. The paste smells like nuts, berries, and mild resignation. You take a bite. It's better than you expected. It always is. Today is a work day, and even in a community where time is mostly marked by shadows and harvest, that still means something. People are making tools, weaving baskets, and generally being productive in that low-effort, competent way that doesn't require a single word to be exchanged. You join in, half out of duty, half out of curiosity. You've been assigned to help patch the thatched roof of one of the older dwellings. It's not glamorous work, but it does provide a wonderful view of the village. From up here, you can see the winding paths, the smoke spirals rising from fires, and a lazy bend of the river that you still think looks like a sleeping lizard. Maybe a fat snake. You're not good with animals. While you work, you hear something low, steady, rhythmic. A woman nearby is humming, not a tune exactly, but a pattern. She's repeating the same 5 notes over and over again. It's hypnotic. Someone else joins in, echoing the sequence in a deeper voice. Then someone else. Before long, the entire group is working to a rhythm that's half music, half meditation. Today's major historical fact. Humans use rhythm and repetition not just for entertainment, but as tools for memorization. Chants, songs, and repeated patterns made it easier to store and transmit large volumes of information, especially when writing hadn't yet made the scene. You hammer a stick into a bundle of reeds in time with the beat. It's strangely satisfying. The roof takes shape like a woven spell. The woman next to you nods approvingly. You realize she has no idea who you are and also doesn't care. You're helping. That's enough. Here's your obscure tidbit. In certain early cultures, there were designated memory singers, individuals trained from childhood to learn and repeat vast oral histories using melody and tone. One wrong note, and the meaning could shift entirely. No pressure. By midday, the roof is patched, Your hands are sore, and someone offers you a drink made from something fermented and ambitious. You accept and immediately regret it. It tastes like sharp berries and moss, and your mouth now feels like it's been scolded by a shrub. You wander down to the river, where a group of children are playing a game involving stones, splashing, and absolutely no clear rules. One of them throws a pebble with unusual ceremony and announces that one's a messenger. No one questions it. The children then act out the story of the pebble's journey, from the water to the clouds to the stars, and then back into a fish's belly. It's brilliant, chaotic, and completely improvised. You clap when it ends. They look at you like, obviously, and return to splashing. And scholars still debate whether this kind of play, ritualized, patterned, story-driven, was rehearsed tradition or spontaneous invention. The truth is probably yes. Both. You sit by the riverbank. The water's slow and warm, watching the light catch the ripples like thin glass. Someone nearby is sketching something in the sand with a stick. You glance over. A series of loops and lines. You recognize a spiral. Yours? Maybe. You add a dot. They smile. The sun begins to dip. Dinner is a shared stew and a sweet root mashed with herbs. You eat in silence, but not a lonely one. It's the silence of shared stories already told, of people knowing when to speak and when not to. As the stars appear, shy and slow as usual, someone begins a low chant, not a performance, just a rhythm. You close your eyes. Your feet ache. Your arms are sore. And your mind is full. Tonight, they're painting. You wake to the scent of crushed ochre and damp stone. Someone nearby is grinding pigments on a flat rock, mixing them with water and spit and something oily that you don't ask about. The colors are earthy, vivid, red, brown, yellow, black. Not fancy, but stubborn. These colors last. You follow the group to the edge of a cliffside cave, where the real work happens. The air is cool inside, thick with age. The walls are already alive with marks, layers upon layers, spirals and hands, animals frozen mid-leap. Figures dancing with impossible knees. There's no talking, just breathing and brushing, and the occasional snort when someone's elbow smears someone else's masterpiece. Today's historical fact. Cave painting is among the oldest known forms of visual storytelling, dating back at least 40,000 years. These weren't mere decorations. They were meaningful, often spiritual, and likely tied to ritual or memory. You're given a piece of charcoal and a blank patch of wall. You panic. What do you draw when your audience is eternity? You start with a shape, simple, a spiral, a few dots, a handprint, just because everyone else is doing it. Your hand looks strange and negative, like a ghost giving a high five. You feel proud and embarrassed, then proud again. A man nearby is painting a series of antelope. Each one is slightly different, as if telling a sequence. One is running. One is still. One is pierced with a spear. It's a hunt, yes, but also a memory, a record, a moment made permanent. And here's your obscure tidbit. Some cave painters use small torches to make the figures appear to move when flickering light dance across them, an early form of animation, centuries before the first flipbook. You lean back and watch the walls. Someone begins humming. Another follows. It's not music. It's a mood, a way to hold the space together. Someone taps a hollow bone against the cave wall. It sounds like distant thunder. Someone laughs softly. No one shushes them. You glance back at your own drawing. It's not perfect. It's not even good. But it's true. In that strange, dreamlike way that all stories are when you get the details wrong, but the feeling right. Scholars still debate whether these paintings were done by a select few, a kind of priestly artist class, or whether everyone was invited in at some point. Right now, it feels like anyone with a handprint is welcome. The firelight glows against the stone, and the images flicker. For a moment, you swear the animals move. They leap, they run, they vanish. Then the torch dims. The group heads out into the starlit air, smelling of dust and charcoal and the quiet satisfaction of having made something ancient. You lie back in the grass, your fingers still stained with red and black. You close your eyes, and you dream in ochre. The rain comes in soft, sideways drizzles, more suggestion than a storm. You're wrapped in fur that used to belong to something fairly irritable, but it's warm, and that's all that matters. The earth under your feet is spongy with water, and the sky is soaking in several shades of gray. Today's storytelling will happen inside, not in a cave, not in a home, in a place that lives in between. It's a shelter made of hide and bone, part tent, part cathedral of leftovers. The interior smells like damp leather and old smoke, and there's something oddly comforting about that. Someone hands you a small carved figure, wood, smooth from many fingers. It's an animal, possibly a horse, possibly a dog, possibly a very confident potato. You hold it carefully, because this is today's story. The group gathers around the storyteller, who sits cross-legged with a basket of similar figurines. There are dozens, creatures, shapes, symbols. Some have exaggerated features. Wide eyes, long limbs, comically oversized ears. They're not toys, though they look like they want to be. The storyteller reaches into the basket and begins, one figure at a time. No words yet, just arrangement. A round one, then a tall one with stripes. One that rattles when she shakes it. Slowly, she builds a scene, a visual constellation of meaning. You follow the placement, the posture of each piece, the way her hand lingers on some longer than others. And just like that, without a sound, the story begins. Historical fact time. Long before books or even oral epics, humans told stories using objects, tokens, carvings, symbolic items laid out in patterns. These weren't just props. They were the story. Moved, changed, reordered as needed. It's like an ancient slideshow, but without the humming projector or the one guy who always brings too many vacation photos. You watch closely. A small figurine is knocked over. A collective gasp. Another placed upright beside it. A rescue? A ritual? Maybe just drama. You lean forward. And here's your obscure cultural tidbit. In some early Arctic communities, families used carved ivory story objects to recount clan histories during long, dark winters. The stories were passed through touch as much as language, hands running over each object to recall the memory tied to it. The storyteller pauses and gestures to you. It's your turn. You panic. Of course, this is becoming a pattern. But your fingers move anyway. You pick the wide-eyed dog-horse potato and place it beside a broken-looking figure. You mimic the storyteller's pause. You nod like it means something. The others nod back. Apparently it does. No one tells you what the story was. That's not the point. The shapes carry meanings that change depending on the hands that hold them. The past here is a playground, and you're invited. The rain drums gently on the hide roof above. The storyteller begins to put the figures away, one by one, each with a quiet reverence, like tucking in old friends. Scholars still debate whether this kind of storytelling was performance, ritual, or education. Frankly, the distinctions may not have existed. Here, the story is not a genre. It's a way of being. As the fire is stirred back to life, you sit quietly beside it. The carved figure is still in your lap. You trace the curve of its back. It means more now, even if you couldn't say why. The rain doesn't stop, but you don't mind. Not when there are stories indoors. The fog is rolled in overnight, thick as wool and twice as smug. It swallows the trees, softens the hills, makes even the loudest of birds reconsider their morning routines. You step outside your shelter, breath puffing in slow spirals. Visibility is, generously, about 6 steps, maybe 7 if you squint. And yet, despite the visual betrayal of the landscape, you're told this is a perfect weather for a journey. A storytelling walk, they say. You blink. You nod. You follow. The group sets off in silence, each person holding a smooth stone. You're given one, too. Yours is speckled, with a flat edge and a stripe across its middle, like it's trying to wear a sash. You feel instantly attached. As you walk, a soft voice begins speaking behind you. Not loudly, just enough for the words to slide into your ears through the mist. A story about a traveler who walks through fog to find a place that might not exist, chasing sound that may or may not be birds. You glance around. Of course, the story is this. It unfolds as you walk, each section matched with a turn in the path, a bend in the trees. As the story's traveler crosses a river, so do you, as they pause at a rock shaped like a sleeping bear. Your group pauses at a boulder that looks suspiciously judgmental. The boundaries between fiction and environment dissolve like dew. Today's major historical fact. In many indigenous and ancient cultures, stories were told on the move, through pilgrimage, pathwalking, and ritual journeys. Landmarks served as narrative anchors. The land itself was a library. You reach a clearing. The mist hangs low, curled around the stones and moss like a sleeping animal. The storyteller stops. Everyone kneels. You're told to place your stone in the earth, not just anywhere, where it feels right. You hesitate, then gently nestle it beside another, one that looks like it's been waiting for your stone specifically. Here's your obscure tidbit. The Yolngu people of northern Australia maintain songlines, oral maps embedded in chants and stories, linking geography to ancestral knowledge. Each verse in the song corresponds to a real-world feature. Follow the song, and you can find your way across the land. You hum softly as your stone joins the others. You don't know the song, but you feel like you remember part of it. Scholars still debate whether this kind of storytelling qualifies as cartography, mythology, or a form of spiritual time travel. It's probably all three. The walk back is quiet, reverent. The fog begins to lift as you arrive back at camp, revealing the trees again in slow motion. The world returns, but changed, or maybe just better lit. That night, no one tells a story aloud. They sit, watching the fire, passing a single stone around the circle. Yours? No, another, smoother, simpler. Each person holds it for a moment, pauses, then passes it on. The silence stretches long and soft and meaningful. You go to bed warm and wordless, and you dream of stones telling stories to one another in the dark.